Unboxing the Rode VideoMic Go 2. This is my camera. The Canon EOS M50. I bought it a few years ago. It has a problem. It has not very good built-in mics. And if you then record something with the microphone that is built in, it just sounds not very good. Compare this to a phone such as the Galaxy S10, and the Galaxy S10 clearly wins. Additionally, with a phone, because it is only limited to, in this regard, 2 times telephoto, you have to often move fairly close to the object, which in terms of recording sound is good. But if you then have something like this, and you zoom into something or onto something, and then you try to record audio, the distance that is actually happening from the mic to the sound source is, of course, also a lot bigger. I tried a few different solutions in the past. And first I want to discuss the possible different solutions that would be available if you still want to record sound. The first solution would be to have 2 microphones, for example, a wireless microphone like the Rode Wireless Go or the Go 2, and attach these to basically the talent, so the people that are in front of the camera, or just the people that are in front of the camera. You could also call them people in front of the camera. And then if you have them attached, one here, one on the other person, maybe around the shirt, as you see in so many YouTube videos, then you can basically get a receiver on here, and this then plugs into the microphone port here, and this allows you to record basically the sound from an external microphone. This would be solution number 1. Solution number 2 would be to have kind of the same setup, but being directly wired to the camera with a cable. So you could take something like the Rode Lavalier Go, and then you attach it to the talent, in this regard maybe me, and then you have this clip, which is usually for shirts, and then this is what also many TV productions have, or maybe also in film. They often use this and then hide it either in post-production or somewhere else. And then if you want to record on a phone, because phones have kind of a different use, basically a different, whatever this is, headphone jack input thing, then you need a TRRS on the phone side to TRS with the 2 rings. It's called TRS, and with the 3 rings, it is called TRRS adapter. But if you just have a normal camera, then you can connect it directly to the camera, and you can also use normal extension cords and normal audio cables, 3.5mm audio cables. You can then insert this into the camera, and then you can directly record. The main problem, you have a wire in between you and the thing that is giving off the sound, in the case you are standing behind the camera. Now you can also combine these 2 solutions and have a lavalier mic on the talent. Then this goes into a sender, sometimes on the belt area, and then the camera actually receives it again. In big TV productions there is obviously more than 1 camera, so the sound is probably captured independently of the picture that is also captured on multiple cameras. Now the third option is to use something that only captures the sound in a very narrow window. Similar to a focal length which you have on a camera, where you can actually zoom in by kind of shifting how the proportion of the lenses are basically against each other. And since the lenses are sometimes magnifying glasses and sometimes the reverse, which I don't know the name of, then this shifts the focus that is then basically here, or it shifts the projected image that would be here, similar to a looking glass that is projecting a certain image onto your retina through your iris and your eye. Now, there were a few different options, and that's now the second part. So we have the theoretic part out of the way. So for many years I figured the option that is basically the best is a microphone that is attached to the camera and that only captures a narrow field of view, which is called a directional mic. Now, in the past, there have been cheap options available, and the main brand many seem to go towards, at least on YouTube, for example, seems to be Rode. And this is the Rode Go 2. And this seems to be a fairly new microphone. This is kind of the cheaper version, and it looks also kind of like the bigger version, which would be the Rode VideoMic NTG broadcast camera mic, and this is about 300 euros. When this came out, I think 1 or 2 years ago, I was like, this is the mic I need, because it has USB-C. It also can be attached to the camera into the hot shoe mount you find on here, and therefore I could also use it maybe in my setup here, just attaching this directly onto my setup, which I can show you kind of with my notebook as a mirror. As you see here, there is an arm, and this microphone arm attaches to a second Galaxy S10 I have installed there. So now, these here, for example, would be the Rode wireless mics that I also discussed previously. And in addition to more or less the cheaper options, there was also the Rode VideoMic Pro and then the Pro Plus, which looks like this, and it also looks black, which is very nice, and it also has this very short or comparably small thing which attaches to the camera and kind of absorbs potential vibrations that would result in bad audio. So for quite some time I figured this would be the one I would get, but it's still 260 euros. Compared to the cheaper options from Rode, which also looked very similar to this one, this offered decent sound. I took a look at a few different reviews on YouTube from this mic. The main problem now the VideoMic Pro Plus has, the one I just showed you, I think, is that it has a built-in battery. Now, this also might be a huge benefit, because if it has a built-in battery, it means it probably amplifies the sound in some way or another. I'm not entirely sure about this. Whereas this is kind of a passive mic, which is powered by the camera. So the camera amplifies the sound, which might not be the best, because some of these not very high-end cameras, like the Canon EOS M50, do have then problems with amplifying the sound up to a level where it is actually kind of a decent sound level. Compared to a phone, for example, that usually does a better job, or a good audio device like my Zoom H6 also does a better job. So it turns out I just tried to open it the wrong way around, and it seems to slide out from the back here. Not from the back, but from the bottom. And I tried to just cut open the top here, which now is kind of damaged, so if I have to send it back, well, not the best. So it is highly directional. It also has 2 years of warranty and has a 3.5mm TRS output, which I think is here. Then we have also a digital USB output, which means you can attach it to your notebook, but also you can attach it via USB-C then to your phone, for example. And this then uses it also as a digital input, and at least I think so, and not just an analog input, which you could only insert into the headphone jack, which the Galaxy S10 fortunately still has. It also says it's for USB devices and made for iPhone, iPad and iPod. And it's also iPhone and Android compatible. This is what the packaging looks like, and then we have the 2 years of warranty. This is what the outer packaging looks like. And now we open up the mic, attach it to the camera and see what it sounds like. So this is inside. I hope it's not too big, and it actually is kind of black, which is very nice, even though the ricotta, I think this is what the holding mechanism is called, is then not black but red, which is a slight bummer. The main reason I didn't get the kind of cheaper versions of these Rode video mics, so there was also the VideoMic Go 1, is because they didn't sound that good in sound tests on YouTube. The Rode VideoMic Pro and the Pro Plus, and this is also very light, I just am beginning to realize, they did sound fairly decent, but they also were kind of more expensive, and they also had the issue with the battery, because I am kind of usually forgetful, and I don't then want to stand there with having recorded maybe 2 hours of video, or maybe recorded 2 hours of professional video, like for somebody else, for a client, maybe, and then just don't have audio because I forgot to turn on the microphone, which would be something that for sure would have happened to me, because obviously I already said it, I probably would forget things every now and then. So for this reason I opted now for this here. I actually didn't check the sound on YouTube, which is kind of not the best idea maybe, but I just said this looks just like the NTG, which I showed you earlier, which would be kind of the prime or the best version I would have gotten, but it is now kind of cheaper and it's called the Go 2, and I hope the sound is not that bad, and I just bought it because it was only 100 euros compared to the 300 euros, which I probably still wouldn't have invested because I just didn't want to invest that much into camera gear. So I now bought this, and I don't know how this attaches ideally into here, and this is also now kind of bigger here, but it also is not too big, I would say. So the lens plus the adapter I have to mount the Canon EFS lenses to my Canon M mount is kind of a little bit bulkier here, makes the whole camera a little bit bulkier. Then we also need an adapter cable, which is this one. It's not really an adapter cable, it is just a normal 3.5mm TRS to TRS cable, and we now will try to open this up. Now we have two different options to connect this. So we can either choose the USB-C or we choose this normal audio output. This is on the left side, which you can see here, and then we attach this to the camera. So maybe I should have let the whole thing in here, because now I have this cable here. I could also maybe wrap it around the microphone itself and thereby kind of get rid of some length. Now it doesn't seem to fit in here totally. So I now wrapped it around the base here, as you can see, and I don't know if this is the best solution. I could also wrap it around this ring here, the hot shoe mount. Okay, now let's turn this whole thing on, and ideally the microphone would now also turn on, but it doesn't really need to turn on because it's kind of a passive microphone. Then I can record something, and I just now am recording kind of the same thing. I'm just recording this screen here, which actually does not look that good because the Canon has here usually a few problems which I cannot really figure out. And that's it. Now we take a look at the footage. An additional problem now, just for the sake of the video, is that the speakers on the Canon EOS M50 are really bad. So if I even play this back at maximum loudness, it still does not sound like anything. So you can barely hear it. So for this reason, I will now compare, first of all, the Lavalier Go, which is the entry-level lavalier mic from Rode, and I will attach this instead of the Zoom H6, which has also a microphone on it, which I can show you like this. So we just turn it up like this. It's the Zoom H6, which I mounted onto the ceiling here. So now I will directly, without the Zoom H6 in between, plug in this lavalier mic, and then you can listen to the sound of the lavalier mic and then compare it to the sound of then the Rode VideoMic Go 2. This now, even though it is almost to my face, whereas the other one is like 1 meter away, should sound fairly or comparably less qualitatively good compared to the Zoom H6. And now I will position the camera with the microphone here, and then I will connect this here instead of the lavalier mic. And this is now what the Rode VideoMic Go 2 would sound like in kind of this distance. This is about 30 centimeters. Now, because this is a directional mic, the more I direct it towards the sound source, it should sound a little bit better. Obviously, I have no way now to monitor the audio, since neither the camera, if I recorded on the Canon EOS M50, would have an audio output which I could listen to, a headphone output. So this is kind of a bummer. So the VideoMic Pro and the VideoMic Pro Plus, the two black ones I showed you earlier, would resolve this issue and you could monitor the audio. But at the same time, it then has the battery, and this again would probably result in me not recording audio for many of the videos I record with this. Now, obviously, this is also kind of a bulky setup, and it is now directly attached. This is why the phone moves if I move the camera. And, well, it is a bulky setup. Nonetheless, it's not the biggest setup in the world, and I think it is kind of a reasonable size. And also, I mean, I can now just record with my phone, but if I do want to have like a normal production level, kind of not necessarily for these videos, but if I'm shooting for somebody else, for example, I just wanted to be able to shoot for somebody else and also just have a decent level video quality. Now, since this also has a USB-C output, I theoretically, I think, can take a data cable, USB-C data cable, and I can, this is the one from my hard drive, because I don't have another one, and then I can connect this. What I do not know at this point in time is whether it now outputs both the sound to kind of both of the sound outputs or only to one. For this reason, I now deconnect this just for the sake of not then because the Zoom H6 was not powered on. Now, of course, what you also could do is you could connect this here to the Zoom H6 and amplify it through the Zoom H6. Similar, you could also use this lavalier mic and then amplify it through the Zoom H6 and then only input it either to the camera or also to the phone. But of course, this adds the problematic or the problem that you then have to have the Zoom H6, which also needs batteries or at least an external power source, which could also be a battery bank. So the last step now is that I already have this here and I now connect this here to my phone, which I know from previous experience is able to also accept USB mics. When recording, it then shows you recording audio through USB mic on the screen. So it just flashed here in the camera app. And now this is what the Rode VideoMic Go 2 sounds like from this distance. Maybe you would have it kind of at a bigger distance like this, and we can also test this. So now this is about 1 meter away from this camera here, from the directional mic. Of course, it's not directly directed onto the thing that's speaking, in this regard me, but one of the main advantages of the camera and the directional mic being directed into kind of the same direction is that it also allows the sound to be picked up kind of from the right angle. So think of it as the sphere that is around, or the potential sphere of directions, and then you just pick the right directions because you're already pointing toward it with the lens. Because speaking, so audio source and kind of video source then are kind of the same thing. This also now means I could connect this to my notebook as a USB-C mic, and it has a little bit of a better option, I think, in terms of connecting it, because it's not analog. It does not need to be leveled out exactly, I think, at least. And I do think that the camera, in this regard, the Galaxy S10, has the option or has the feature to kind of see where the sound is at and then adapt it to maximally, basically, or to optimize it for the video recording. Compared to if I input it analogly or analog, then this might not be the case, or to a lesser extent, I think. Now, what you also could do is you could take this kind of as a holding mic, but for this, it kind of is just a little bit too small, I think. It just looks a little bit too, well. I just forgot to plug in the zoom again. So you could also use this as a holding mic, but for this, it is a little bit too light, and it also is not that, like, it just, compared to the one that is the proper one, it just is a little bit too small and makes you look weird, I think. There is, though, an option for the wireless mics that actually has kind of a proper thing you could attach it to. You could also probably attach this, maybe with the Ricotti, to something like this, and then have a tripod like this, but probably it's not the best option. So on the wireless Go 2 mics, you do have the option to have kind of this handheld thing, and then you can attach one of the wireless senders with also a built-in microphone, and then you kind of have a proper microphone, which also I saw used in many YouTube videos these days. The use case for me is that I usually have the phone in here, and this is kind of the setup, and what I could do now is attach the Rode Go 2 into the hot shoe mount that is on this smartphone holder mount, and it's on the side because I mounted it this way, and then I have attached it to a ball head, and this is attached to a microphone holding arm that is also kind of flexible, so I can move it to the back and to the front depending on what kind of zoom in and zoom out of my video I need. So then I would have attached it kind of to the side here, and I then plug it in. And then this is the cable that is from my Zoom, and this is then attached to a TRS to TRS adapter, and I just need to switch these two. And this is how the whole setup then looks like with the phone here. And this is then what it sounds like. Now, since I recorded not in portrait mode, the video looks a little bit differently, but this is what it would sound like if I would just have it attached. I could probably rotate this a little bit, but no, I cannot. So the rotation seems to be fixed, but since it is kind of on the same line, on the same plane, it does record basically into my direction, even though it is slightly off because it's rotated. It's not rotated, but it's to the left. So this would be a small downside. But the idea is that I now don't have to switch on my Zoom H6, which I sometimes forget, and then I don't have audio. I can also use this here as a directional mic. If I'm standing here or here, it should not make the biggest of difference. And I can also use this on my camera and don't have to use a lavalier mic anymore, which has the downside of having the cable. I also didn't have to buy a 300 wireless mic set, which would have been kind of the less flexible option. I think also when recording somewhere else, if I would record an interview, for example, then of course now I only have one mic on the camera, if I have it on the camera, and I would need to switch in between those two, so I could only be the filmer. But I think switching or just choosing the directional mic that is attached to the camera makes more sense, because I'm then way more flexible and it should give off a decent sound. I haven't listened to the sound yet because I was not able to monitor it, but it could be if I attached it to the Zoom with an adapter like this. So this has a 6.3mm jack on the one side that I can insert into the Zoom, and this is a 3.5mm TRS jack on the other side. So I did try with over the Zoom, but it didn't work for some reason. I just couldn't get it. I tried 2 different cables and, well, it just didn't give off any sound. I don't know, maybe the Rode VideoMic 2 needs an additional source of power, or it is powered by the camera, I don't know. And, well, I think that's the end of the story. I now have it mounted here. I can also now ideally record on here, even though I heard a little bit of the sound, but I have not played back the video yet, so I don't know what it actually sounds